Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel. I'm a general physician. Today we'll be talking on one of the very interesting topic we call as hypercalcemia. Once in a while you will come across in your everyday practice and you will see those cases also. So we'll be talking on hypercalcemia, meaning elevated level of calcium in blood. We'll be talking under this heading definition, etiology, pathophysiology, clinical features, investigation, differential diagnosis, treatment, and complications. Now, normal range of calcium is between 8.9. We roughly say between 9 to 10. So, more than 10.3 is considered as abnormal. So, normal serum calcium level is between 8 to 10. Ionized calcium is between 4 to 5.6. And hypercalcemia means if the serum calcium level becomes more than 10.5 and if ionized serum calcium becomes more than 5.6, it is roughly we say that half of total calcium, then we call that as hypercalcemia. Or in millimole, if you calculate the ionized serum calcium, more than 1.4 millimole, which should be multiplied by, we call almost 10. Now, if you roughly see the distribution of calcium, 99% of the calcium is present in bone, 1% is present in blood and body fluid. Out of that 1%, if we roughly see, 65% is in a diffusible form and 35 is in a non-diffusible form. This non-diffusible is attached to the albumin and globulin, means this cannot be utilized. While out of this 65, 80% is ionized, 20% is present in a complex form. So if calcium level becomes more than 10.5, we consider that as hypercalcemia. And as the level rises between 10 to 12 we call as mild, from 12 to 14 we call as a moderate, between 14 to 16 we call as a hypercalcemic crisis, and if it becomes more than 16 we call very severe variety, mild, moderate and severe. And if you roughly see, this particular level is roughly 50% of total, 50% of total roughly. So severe variety, mild, moderate and severe, and then we call very severe. More than 16 we call that as very severe. You label that moderate 12 to 14, and more than 14 we call as a critical. That is between 14 to 16 we consider that as severe. Between 10.5 to 12 we consider that is a mild one. So this is same thing given here: plasma calcium level, free ionized level, protein bound, complex form, total percentage of calcium. This is in milligram, this is in milliequivalent, this is in millimole. So 50% of milligram is milliequivalent and 50% of that is millimole. So if roughly divide this by 4, it comes to this figure. And if you want to calculate in milliequivalent, divide by half. So mild, moderate and severe I have already told you. In severe, more than 14 is considered as severe and more than 16 is considered as very severe. You call hypercalcemic crisis when with hypercalcemia you get severe neurological symptoms and signs plus cardiac arrhythmia. So CNS and heart gets involved, and usually it is when the serum calcium becomes more than 14, or when the serum calcium is more than 16. This is hypercalcemic crisis. And whenever you get a serum calcium more than 16, you will start getting calcification in different tissue other than bone. That is cornea, lens, kidney. So you call band keratopathy in a cornea and lens, cataract in a kidney, nephrocalcinosis, stone formation, calcification of tendon, muscle, lens, cornea, artery, lymph nodes, etc. All these can get calcified. Now, as far as the etiology is concerned, 90% of the time it is because of the malignancy with a bone metastasis, particularly carcinoma, leukemia, lymphomas, multiple myeloma. So because of that bone metastasis, you start getting calcium coming out of the bone and it will elevate your calcium level. Second most common cause is parathyroid disorders. That is primary hyperparathyroidism, secondary hyperparathyroidism. Then even in case of hyperthyroidism, not parathyroidism, hyperthyroidism, and in a case of a parathyroid malignancy with secondary metastasis. You can also get hypercalcemia because of immobilization, either because of plaster, that is casting, traction, or osteoporosis in an elderly person, paraplegia, quadriplegia, etc. Or in a case of a vitamin toxicity like vitamin A and D toxicity, excess level of vitamin A and excess level of vitamin D. Also in other disorders like hyperthyroidism, milk alkali syndrome, Addison's, granulomatous disorders with secondary metastasis in bone, or also with drugs like thiazide and lithium. These are some of the most common, out of which bone metastasis and parathyroid disorders accounts for almost 90%. So first always rule out parathyroid gland and bone disorders. So we always say parathyroid and malignancy related disorders. Other conditions like vitamin D toxicity, granulomatous disorders, high bone turnover, milk alkali syndromes, Williams syndromes, and increased intestinal calcium absorption. While among malignancy, breast carcinoma, lung, multiple myeloma, leukemia, lymphomas, renal cell carcinoma, parathyroid disorders, particularly we call increased level of parathormone related polypeptide, which is elevated in certain malignancy. Then osteolytic disorders of bone, vitamin D toxicity, ectopic parathyroid secretions, particularly from teratomas, ovarian or testicular teratomas, bronchogenic carcinoma, particularly oat cell carcinoma, or we call small cell carcinoma. Some of the GI tract disorders can also have an ectopic parathyroid secretion. Together we call it a paraneoplastic syndrome. And basically primary parathyroid disorders like primary hyperparathyroidism, which may be because of adenoma, generalized hyperplasia, or multiple endocrine adenomatosis type 1 and type 2A, or maybe because of lithium related release of parathormone, or familial cases of hyperparathyroidism, hypercalciuric hypercalcemia. So this accounts for almost 90% of the cases. So hyperparathyroidism, immobilization, thiazide diuretics, lithium, vitamin A toxicity, etc. also accounts for other group of disorders. You can remember other way like chimpanzee, calcium supplements, hyperparathyroidism, immobilization, milk alkali syndrome, medications, and M also stands for multiple endocrine neoplasia, type 1 and type 2A. Parathyroid hyperplasia, adenoma, A for alcohol, N for neoplasm, particularly of a breast, lung, and kidney. Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, excessive vitamin D, excessive vitamin A and sarcoidosis. You can remember with this or you can remember separately. Particularly malignancy, parathyroid disorders accounts for almost 90% of the disorders. And rest you can remember whatever way you want. Other way of remembering vitamin trap. V for vitamin A and D toxicity, immobilization, thyrotoxicosis, Addison's milk alkali syndrome, inflammatory disorders, neoplastic disorders, sarcoidosis, T for thiazide and lithium, R for rhabdomyolysis, A for AIDS, and P for Paget disease, parenteral nutrition, pheochromocytoma, and parathyroid disorders. You can remember whichever way you want. Yes, one another condition we divide into two big groups. Parathyroid dependent, parathyroid independent. Means where the parathyroid is responsible for hypercalcemia or hypercalcemia is independent of parathyroid secretions. And this parathyroid dependent can be primary hyperparathyroidism, tertiary hyperparathyroidism, familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia, and ectopic secreting tumors. In all these conditions, parathyroid secretion is very high. So they are called parathyroid dependent hypercalcemia. So this is a big group. So primary, secondary and tertiary parathyroid level will be always elevated, and calcium level will be elevated in primary and tertiary, not in case of secondary. Usually in secondary, hypocalcemia is a cause for secondary hyperparathyroidism. While in case of a primary hyperparathyroidism, parathyroid is elevated, calcium is elevated. In parathyroid related polypeptides malignancy, parathyroid level is low, while parathyroid related polypeptide level will be high, calcium level will be high, and non parathyroid related polypeptide malignancy, parathyroid level will be low, even parathyroid hormone related polypeptide will be low, but calcium level will be high. And this is the way you try to differentiate parathyroid dependent and parathyroid independent groups. Independent groups will be this group, while dependent groups is this group, primary. Primary and tertiary. Primary and tertiary are these two common groups. And other is called as a familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia and ectopic secreting parathyroid secreting tumors. Now, as far as the pathophysiology is concerned, hypercalcemia inhibits neuron and muscle cells, and it also acts on a cardiac muscle, producing short QT and cardiac arrhythmias. Calcium balance is controlled by three main structures. We call all three hormones, that is parathyroid, calcitonin secreted by C cells of thyroid gland, and vitamin D, active vitamin D3, that is calcitriol, and parathyroid, which is secreted by chief cells of parathyroid glands. So these are the three hormones, and these three hormones will be acting on kidney, small intestine, and on bones. So because of this, they take part in what we call the calcium homeostasis. Hypercalcemia, that is calcium, will hyperpolarize the cell membrane, and once it gets hyperpolarized, the person will start developing symptom signs of what we call as a neuron, skeletal muscle, and cardiac muscles. When the calcium is between 12 to 12, usually person is asymptomatic. As the calcium level starts rising, now calcium will have an effect on neurons, skeletal muscle, cardiac muscles, and other systems, cells, other cells. But when it becomes more than 14, now person will be definitely symptomatic. And when it becomes more than 16, you will start getting calcification, metastatic calcification of cornea, lens, tendon, muscle, nodes, nephrocalcinosis, renal stones, etc. So this is a very simple diagram which we already explained in a calcium homeostasis, that in an extracellular fluid there is a 1300 milligram which will be exchanged with cells and which will be exchanged with kidney. In kidney, say 9980 is filtered. Out of that, reabsorb is 9880. So 100 is thrown out in urine. So you have got approximately 100 milligram thrown out in urine. While in a GI tract, 350 is absorbed from GI tract and 250 is secreted back into GI tract by different secretions. So roughly we say that 100 milligram is absorbed from GI tract. So that 100 milligram extra is thrown out in urine. So roughly this is how the balance is being maintained. And whatever you take orally, out of that 900 milligram is thrown out. That 900 milligram plus 100 milligram becomes 1000. So whatever is intact is your maintained. And so there is a maintenance of an extracellular fluid, cellular calcium and bone calcium. So this exchange is same. This exchange is same. Here 100 milligram is thrown out. Here 100 is reabsorbed. And total, whatever is taken out of that, you can see that only 350 is absorbed. So 650 plus 250, what is secreted out? 900 is thrown out in GI tract and 100 is thrown out by urine. Indirectly, balance in cell, extracellular fluid and bone is being maintained. And mainly, calcium is lost by means of a fecal matter and urine. And reabsorption takes place at the level of GI tract. That is what we call as a 350 milligram is absorbed, 250 is secreted, so 100 milligram is retained and 100 milligram is thrown out in urine. So balance is well maintained. So this is how parathermone will be acting on bone, guts and kidney. Parathermone will give rise to increased osteoclastic activity. So calcium will be shifted from bone to the extracellular fluid. So calcium level will be increased. It will act on a GI tract by increasing the action of vitamin D, which will increase the absorption of calcium. So calcium level in the blood will also increase. On a kidney, it will give rise to reabsorption of calcium and phosphate is excreted out. So final phosphate level will be low and calcium level will be high because of increased parathermone secretions. While vitamin D mainly will act on a GI tract by increasing the calcium absorption and phosphate absorption. So calcium and phosphate levels will be maintained in blood. So phosphate level will be elevated if there is a vitamin D toxicity. So calcium and phosphate both will be elevated, while in parathermone calcium will be elevated, phosphate will be thrown out in urine. So that will be there. Vitamin D does not have direct effect on kidney and there is no direct action on bone. Indirectly it gives rise to the bone formation by deposition of calcium in bone and it increases the osteoblastic activity. But main action is on gut, while parathermone has got action on bone and kidney and indirect action via vitamin D, while calcitonin will be inhibiting osteoclast and increases the osteoblastic activity. Hence in a bone, the shift of the calcium from bone into the blood is reduced, increasing the bone density and calcium level in the blood will reduce, phosphate level also in the blood will reduce. It has got no direct effect on gut. On kidney, it will give rise to calcium and phosphate excretion, leading to hypocalcemia and hypophosphatemia. So these are the three hormones acting on a three structure, bone, gut and kidney. If you remember this, the calcium metabolism will be very simplified. So this is a nice balance between calcium and phosphorus. Whenever the calcium level rises, the phosphate level usually will fall. Only in case of a hypervitaminosis D, calcium and phosphate level both are elevated because both are absorbed from GI tract and that gives rise to elevation of calcium as well as phosphorus level. This is how the hypercalcemia occurs in hyperparathyroidism. I already explained before. This is how exactly it is acting on osteoblast and giving rise to bone formation by different structures, by different materials like metabolic acidosis, cytokines in diabetes, old age, uremia, vitamin D deficiency, hypogonadism, etc. In all these conditions, how it is acting on bones, and that is how you get a dynamic bone formation. This is how the extracellular calcium maintains by bone, kidney and GI tract. And on that, three hormones, vitamin D, calcitonin and parathyroid. These three will be working. Also, you can have effect of thiazide diuretic on a kidney and can produce certain disorders, particularly a familial hypocalcemic calciuria where calcium is not thrown out by kidney and it is retained. So it will give rise to hypercalcemia and urine will have a less calcium. So this will be a peculiar disorders what you can come across. In a case of an acidosis, because of acidosis, the calcium level attached to albumin will be reduced. So you will have ionized calcium more available in blood, increasing the ionized calcium level. While in alkalosis, more calcium is attached to albumin, by which the ionized calcium in blood is reduced. So remember, in acidemia, excess of ionized calcium; in alkalosis, metabolic as well as what we call as respiratory alkalosis, ionized calcium level is reduced, and this is the factor which is responsible for in alkalosis, whether it is metabolic or respiratory, leading to hypocalcemia and T10. While in case of an acidosis, you will have an increased ionized calcium and calcium level will be elevated. As far as clinical feature is concerned, there is a common word which is being utilized. Whenever the calcium level increases above 12, you start getting symptoms. Usually between 12 to 14, the symptoms are almost negligible or we call asymptomatic. So if calcium level is less than 12, usually they are asymptomatic. But when level increases above 12, the person is usually symptomatic. But in a case of severe variety, that is more than 14, you will start getting severe symptoms we call stone, bones, abdominal groans and psychic different disorders. So stones, renal calculi and nephrocalcinosis, bone osteolysis and you start getting osteitis, fibrosa, cystica. Moans means severe abdominal pain mainly because of peptic ulcer and pancreatitis. Also a person can have a pain because of renal calculi. And groans is psychic disorders. So these are the four words which are being commonly utilized in hypercalcemia. We have already discussed this in a case of hyperparathyroidism. So in a kidney you start getting nephrocalcinosis and recurrent and multiple renal stones. In bones you start getting osteolytic areas and recurrent fractures. Even sometimes mild trivial injury can produce fractures. Groans mean psychic disorders like depressions, anxiety. In GI tract, person can develop peptic ulcer disorders and even acute pancreatitis because of elevated level of calcium. So these are all the different things which you can come across in renal nephrolithiasis, nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, dehydration, nephrocalcinosis is quite common. While as far as bones is concerned, bony pain, arthritis, osteoporosis, osteitis fibrosa cystica, hyperparathyroidism will produce subperiosteal resorption, bone cyst and easy fractures, multiple fractures. Gastrointestinal, nausea, vomiting, anorexia, weight loss, constipation, abdominal pain because of pancreatitis, peptic ulcer and also because of what we call as a nephrolithiasis. That can also produce abdominal pain. It is called abdominal moans. And psychic groans means neuromuscular with psychiatric disorders. Impair concentration, impair memory, confusion, stupor, coma, even sometimes seizures. Lethargy, fatigue, muscular weakness, and when the calcium level becomes more than 16, very severe hypercalcemic crisis we call. So you can get corneal calcification, band keratopathy, You can have a cardiovascular complication, you can have a neuromuscular complications. In a cardiovascular complication, hypertension, short QT, cardiac arrhythmias, and person can even have a mortality. And vascular calcification can also take place. And as far as neuromuscular is concerned, person can be unconscious and can get convulsions. As far as skin is concerned, keratitis, conjunctivitis, itching, what we call as a skin and mucous membrane, itching, keratitis and conjunctivitis, mucous membrane and skin. These are some of the symptoms. Mild are usually asymptomatic or may have a recurrent problems like kidney stones. But rapid rise or severe hypercalcemia will always have CNS and cardiovascular very common, particularly confusion, stupor, coma, seizures, and person can even have a death secondary due to cardiac arrhythmias, secondary due to short QT syndromes. So whatever we have discussed before, same thing. Because of short QT, you can get heart blocks, bradycardia, cardiac arrhythmias, and cardiac arrest can also take place. Renal, musculoskeletal, neuromuscular, ataxia. This is in acute hypercalcemia. This is in a chronic hypercalcemia. In acute, anorexia, nausea, vomiting, polyuria, polydipsia, neuromuscular depression, confusion, stupor, coma. And as far as cardiac is concerned, bradycardia, first degree AV block, short QT, and other type of cardiac arrhythmias. While in case of a chronic, usually constipation, acute pancreatitis, dyspepsia, nephrolithiasis, nephrocalcinosis, proximal muscle weakness, hyperreflexia, gait disturbances, and as far as a chronic complication in cardiovascular system, hypertension and digitalis toxicity can take place. In severe hypercalcemia, band keratopathy, bony tenderness, hyperactive tendon reflex, tongue fasciculations. A pregnant lady may cause hypocalcemia in a neonates by suppressing the fetal parathyroid glands, and hypercalcemia can also decrease GFR and will produce effect on a kidney. So person more than 14 will start developing hypercalcemic crisis, and person can have a decompensated hypercalcemia, and that can produce myocardial calcinosis, cardiac arrest, hypercalcemic renal failure, in CNS, convulsions and coma. And also there is a gradual or sudden onset of mostly from primary hyperparathyroidism. This is usually very common in primary hyperparathyroidism. And compensated hypercalcemia will be very common. In 70% cases will be malignancy, 20% will be primary hyperparathyroidism, and 10% will be in a miscellaneous group. This is, you can see a calcification seen here in a tendon, calcification in tendon and joints. You can see here calcification. You can see calcification here. So these are the common. In ECG you will see a prolonged PR, that is first degree AV block, wide QRS complex, short QT, ST elevation, wide T wave, etc. And person can end with cardiac arrest. This is, I can skip over, these are the effect of hypocalcemia on cardiovascular, central, GI tract, musculoskeletal and other. As far as investigation wise, history and physical examination becomes very important. In cardiovascular system, look for hypertension because hypertension is one of the complications of hypercalcemia. Bradycardia is a very common feature in hypercalcemia. CNS monitoring and even a cardiovascular monitoring is necessary. In CNS, neurological status, altered level of consciousness, vital signs, daily weight, assess the vowel sounds, do total calcium, ionized calcium, investigate for parathyroid gland, look for parathormone level, also look for parathormone related polypeptide, renal parameters, bones studies, look for malignancy because these are the most common causes for hypercalcemia. Also vitamin D levels should be done and vitamin D metabolites levels should be also done to find out that. So when you want to approach to a calcium, these are all the investigation which we have already mentioned. Even ECG will be helpful. So these are all the laboratory parameters which you do: calcium, phosphate, parathermone related peptides, vitamin D level, and urinary calcium. And these are the disorders in which you will have an abnormality, and you can differentiate by doing this investigation, that is malignant disorders where calcium and phosphate will be high, parathermone level will be low, parathermone related polypeptide may be high because this will be secreted from different malignant tumors, vitamin D level will be low, urinary calcium will be low. So this will be very peculiar. While in a primary, calcium will be high, phosphate will be low, parathermone will be high, this polypeptide will be normal, vitamin D level will be high, urinary calcium level will be high. While in a vitamin D excess, vitamin D level will be elevated, calcium and phosphate both will be elevated because calcium and phosphate will be reabsorbed mainly from GI tract. Parathermone level will be reduced because of hypercalcemia. This will be normal, and urinary calcium level will be elevated because of hypercalcemia. In a thiazide, urinary calcium level will be reduced, and hence the calcium in a blood will be elevated. Parathermone level will be also elevated, while other will be other three, that is parathermone related polypeptides, and vitamin D level will be normal. In a milk alkaloid syndrome, mainly the calcium is derived from the diet. So calcium and phosphate level will be elevated. Urinary calcium level will be low. Parathermone will be reduced because of hypercalcemia, while vitamin D and parathermone related polypeptide level will be normal. In step 1, we always say look at the parathermone level. So parathermone will be elevated in familial hyperparathyroidism. In MEN also it will be elevated. Also it will be elevated in a person with what we call as tertiary hyperparathyroidism. Also in case of primary and secondary hyperparathyroidism. So look in those conditions where parathermone level will be elevated. So after analyzing the parathermone level, I've already shown you this chart. Look at that, in which condition parathermone is elevated. So parathermone, you can see it is elevated in primary, secondary and tertiary variety. I've already shown you one slide of primary, secondary and tertiary differentiation. So in those conditions, while in other, that is malignancy, granulomatous, vitamin D, thiazide and milk alkaloid syndrome, parathermone level is low. So that is very, very important. Look at the parathermone related polypeptide. So that particular, again, this slide is very useful. So that will be elevated only in malignancy. And you can see in all other condition it is normal. So if that is elevated, look at the malignant part. And look at the vitamin D metabolites, because vitamin D metabolites will be elevated only in case of vitamin D toxicity. So have a look at that. Almost you will be able to differentiate the most common condition. So here those three conditions are given: primary, secondary and tertiary. In primary and secondary, parathermone level is elevated on all the three. Calcium will be elevated in hyperparathyroidism primary and tertiary, while it will be low in case of secondary. Very easy to differentiate. Clear? While in case of a primary hyperparathyroidism, vitamin D level will be also elevated, while vitamin D will be normal in case of secondary and tertiary. This will be normal. In malignancy, parathermone level will be low. Parathermone related polypeptide level will be high, while calcium level will be elevated. So in spite of calcium level elevation, the person will be hypercalcemic because of parathermone related polypeptides. Parathermone, not because of parathermone itself. So parathermone level will be low because of hypercalcemia. While in granulomatous disease, it is because of deposition in the bones. In those particular conditions, parathermone level will be low. This related polypeptide level will be elevated. Vitamin D level will be elevated, and calcium level will be also elevated. So you can easily differentiate. These are the four commonest conditions in your everyday practice. Look for other causes like multiple myeloma, thyrotoxicosis. For thyrotoxicosis, do TSH level which will be markedly low. T3, T4 level will be high. Look for vitamin A level. Look for milk alkali syndromes. Multiple myeloma, you can go for an X-ray and you can go for an electrophoresis, which will give you M band being high. IgM level will be elevated. And you can also detect what we call as Benz-Jones protein in urine, etc. So in a suspected case, look at the calcium level. If calcium level is more than 10.3, you are suspecting hypercalcemia. Once you suspect hypercalcemia, look at the parathormone level. We call as a I parathormone. And if it is elevated, primary hyperparathyroidism. If it is low, look for vitamin D toxicity, milk alkali syndrome, malignancy, and lymphomas. And if it is low, look for parathormone related polypeptide. If this is elevated, it is usually in a case of malignancy. So this will be elevated in case of malignancy, very common. And simultaneously look for urinary calcium level. If it is low, familial, yes, familial hyperparathyroidism, hypocalcemic, hypocalcemic, hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. And if it is normal, urinary calcium level is normal, then it is because of increase of this activity, sestamine activity. And if it is low, this is low, then look for endocrine disorders like hyperthyroidism. Look for hyperthyroidism. This is for vitamin D levels. So if vitamin D levels are high, look for lymphomas. So this is again the same thing what we have discussed before. Hypercalcemia level with measure intact parathormone level. If it is high, look for primary hyperparathyroidism and familial hypercalciuric hypercalcemia. So it is called FHH, hypercalcemic hypercalciuria. So that particular. And if urinary calcium level is low, it is in favor of hypercalciuric. And if it is high, primary hyperparathyroidism. And if parathyroid related polypeptide is elevated, you also look for vitamin D metabolites. If that is elevated, consider malignancy, parathormone related polypeptide. And if vitamin D is elevated, look for lymphomas and sarcoidosis. Or also purely elevation of 25 vitamin D, look for vitamin toxicity, lithium and thiazides. And if it is normal, consider thyroid disorders, that is hyperthyroidism and vitamin A toxicity. Look for those. So I'll skip over. These are all different things which are being given. You can undergo at your leisure time. Have a pause and go through those particular slides if you are interested. These are all multiple slides, all different ways. Whatever we have discussed before, always try to. The most common is hyperparathyroidism and malignancy. Rule out those two. Then comes other type of malignancy we call as a granulomatous disorders. And then also look for familial hypocalciuric hypercalcemia. Differential diagnosis already we have discussed before. Now as far as the treatment part is concerned, if person is asymptomatic, you can wait for a while, try to identify the cause and treat that basic cause. But if the person is symptomatic and if the calcium level is more than 12, between 12 to 14, usually person are asymptomatic. But if the person starts developing symptom or if the calcium level is more than 14, then person will be always symptomatic. They should be treated. What you require is monitor calcium and phosphorus level, ECG monitoring, input output charts, look for the urinary calcium level, neurological status should be monitored, heart rate and blood pressure should be monitored, vital signs like blood pressure, pulse, respiration Usually they are bradycardia. Daily weight should be taken. Look at the level of consciousness and assess the bowel sound, because excess of calcium can produce decreased peristalsis. Always treat by 4 routes: decrease intestinal calcium absorption, increase urinary calcium excretion, decrease bone resorption, and remove calcium via dialysis. And you can remove calcium by ionize calcium by EDTA. This can be done. So these are all the different methods by which you try to lower the calcium level. So detection, first try to find out whether it is hypercalcemia, what is the phosphate level, what is the parathormone level. Try to identify the etiology as fast as possible. You give fluid to prevent toxic effects of calcium, preferably normal saline. You can use furosemide diuretics to decrease the calcium level. Prednisolone can be used to reduce calcium reabsorption from GI tract, and calcitonin can be used to have opposite action to parathormone, which will reduce the GI tract absorption, which will also reduce the absorption from kidney, and also bone resorption will be reduced. Now usually phosphate is being utilized orally or per enema. By and large, the IV fluids and diuretic is utilized to reduce the calcium level after loading with saline. Glucocorticoid is utilized to inhibit the calcium absorption from intestine, and it will increase the urinary excretion. You can use the calcium binder, or we call as a chelators. You can also undergo dialysis. You can subject them to a dialysis, and you can use certain drugs which can reduce calcium level in blood. You can discontinue oral or IV calcium or drugs or antacids which increases the calcium level. So mainly reduce parathormone secretions, decrease calcium reabsorption from intestine, inhibit the bone resorption, increase urinary calcium excretion, and treat the underlying cause are the main pillar for treatment of hypercalcemia. So these are the drugs which decreases the bone resorption: calcitonin and what we call as phosphate binders. So these are those particular compounds which can promote calcium excretion by normal saline and furosemide, decreases the reabsorption of calcium from GI tract by prednisolone, that is steroid, or by hemodialysis. So main pillar becomes IV saline with hydration and diuresis, glucocorticoid which will act on a GI tract. This will be increasing the excretion by kidney. Biphosphonate will shift the calcium from periphery to the bones, and calcitonin will also do multiple action on bones, on GI tract, and on kidney. In kidney it will increases the excretion, in GI tract decreases the absorption, and on bone it will increase the osteoblastic activity and decreases the osteoclastic activity. So these are all the different material: saline, calcitonin, biphosphonate, loop diuretics, glucocorticoid, calcium mimetics, and dialysis. What is the mode of action, onset of action, duration of action, etc. At your leisure time you can go through. These are the doses and these are the side effects. Whenever you give IV saline, there is always a chance with diuretics. There is a chance of hypokalemia and hypomagnesemia. While you give and calcitonin, you can have an escape phenomena. Prednisolone, excess of prednisolone can produce Cushing syndrome, and hemodialysis can have a dialysis related complications. In a case of a chronic hypercalcemia, you correct by treating parathyroid disorders like parathyroidectomy or chemotherapy, particularly in case of a primary hyperparathyroidism or tertiary hyperparathyroidism. Maintain euvolumia by using diuretics. Slightly urine output should be increased. Decrease production of vitamin D. Low calcium diet, avoid vitamin D intake, steroids. You can use chloroquine, you can use ketoconazole. And decrease intestinal absorption by of calcium by giving low calcium diet, steroid, and avoid vitamin D preparations. Decrease bone resorption by giving steroid, low parathormone level, and avoid vitamin D use. You can use biphosphonate and you can use inhibitors, receptor activator inhibitors. Biphosphonates are used to treat hypercalcemia in patients with malignancy. And this particular group of compound we call as a RNKL inhibitors that are used particularly to inhibit the osteoclastic activity. So these are all the treatment whatever we have discussed before. These are the indication for parathyroidectomy. If you come across this particular BMD score, reduction in creatinine clearance, urinary calcium becomes very high, and age less than 50, and person is symptomatic hypercalcemia, you can ask for parathyroidectomy. These are the principles of treatment in any person with a chronic hypercalcemia. These are all the complications which you can come across in a person with an mainly in a case of an acute rather than chronic. Sinus bradycardia, first degree AV block, cardiac arrhythmia, cardiac arrest, hypertension, pancreatitis, peptic ulcer disease, nephrolithiasis, nephrocalcinosis, CKD, vascular calcification, osteoporosis, fracture, brown tumors, we call osteitis fibrosa cystica, and person can have easy fractures, etc. Take home message, hypercalcemia is often asymptomatic. Screen all suspected case by doing serum calcium and ionized calcium. Look at the parathormone we call as a I parathormone and follow the algorithms. 90% are hyperparathyroidism and malignancy. So look for hyperparathyroidism and malignant disorders. In malignant disorders, IPTH is reduced and parathormone related polypeptide may be elevated. Also another common cause is vitamin D toxicity. So look for that by looking at vitamin D level and metabolites level. Thiazide diuretic can be another common cause for hypercalcemia. So look for that. Hypervitaminosis A is also a common cause. While treating, adequate hydration by normal saline and then diuretics. Calcitonin with biphosphonates is a mainstay of a treatment in case of hypercalcemia. I end my lecture here. I hope this will be very helpful to you. See you in next series.